Single mom saves starving elder in 3 hours. Then the CEO discovered his hidden father. Inspiring. Sarah rushed down the dimly lit sidewalk, her heart racing after another grueling shift at the diner. The air was crisp, and the fading sunlight painted the sky in golden hues. Her thoughts drifted to Mia, her spirited daughter, and the half-finished homework waiting for them at home. But then, she spotted him, a frail man crumpled against the cold concrete, his body gaunt and weary. Panic surged through her as she approached. He looked like he'd been left behind by the world, an old army jacket barely holding onto his frame. "Sir. Are you okay?" she called out, kneeling beside him. His sunken eyes fluttered open. In that moment, the weight of her exhaustion melted away, replaced by compassion. Instinct kicked in. Without a second thought, she supported him as he struggled to sit up, offering him a gentle smile. "Let us get you some food." As they made their way to the diner, Sarah's mind raced. She pulled out her meager tips, enough to buy a warm meal. The familiar clang of dishes and chatter of patrons filled the cozy atmosphere when they entered. She led him to her usual table, the one by the window. The waitress approached them, and Sarah ordered a steaming bowl of soup and a slice of apple pie. Over steaming mugs of coffee, their stories spilled out like a forgotten family album. He introduced himself as George, a veteran haunted by memories of war. "I lost my family when I came back. Turns out, they didn't know how to deal with me," he whispered, voice trembling. Sarah shared her own struggles as a single mom, fighting to keep a roof over Mia's head. "I can't imagine what that's like." "But family, it's everything," George said, his eyes glimmering with unspoken hopes. At that moment, Sarah mentioned the name Bill, the estranged son George had long given up on. Bill had grown into a successful CEO, untouched by his father's demons. The name hung between them like a tether, a thread connecting their lives in unexpected ways. Sarah's heart ached for George as she silently vowed to bridge that chasm. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue, but then, tragedy struck. George's health deteriorated, and Sarah felt the urgency rise within her. Rallying her friends and neighbors, she organized bake sales and community dinners, igniting hope where there had been neglect. Yet the wall between George and Bill remained steadfast. When they finally met, Bill was cold and dismissive, shoving aside the past, leaving Sarah frustrated and heartbroken. As she confronted Bill, she urged him to see the truth of family. "You don't get to erase him just because it's easier," she shouted. The words hung in the air, electrifying the space between them. Bill's tough exterior began to crack under the weight of unresolved love and pain, a glimpse of vulnerability flickering in his eyes, and just like that, they stood on the brink of something significant, the whole town watching, holding its breath. Could love heal their old wounds? Would George reclaim his son, and could Sarah's bravery light the path? As tension simmered, one question remained: would Bill embrace the father he had long forgotten? Sarah stood between Bill and George, feeling the heavy charge of the moment wrap around them like a thick fog. The small diner, usually filled with laughter and the smell of fresh coffee, now pulsed with silence. All eyes were on them, waiting to see if the walls that had held these two men apart would finally crumble. Bill shifted uncomfortably, glancing at George. "I just don't understand, okay? Why should I care now?" His voice was shaky, a raw mix of anger and fear. "He wasn't there for me, he left." George's face paled, memories flashing behind his deep-set eyes. "I never wanted to leave you, Bill. I thought of you every day, every moment. I fought for a country but lost the battle with my own mind. I'm sorry." Sarah could see the pain twist in Bill's expression. His walls were high, built from years of hurt. Just beneath the surface simmered a longing for connection. "You think saying sorry fixes everything?" Bill challenged, but his tone was softer now. As if a layer of frost was warming under the sun. In that instant, Sarah stepped closer, her voice steady. "No, it doesn't. But it can open a door. You're both fighting your own battles. This could be a chance to heal together." Her words settled between them, a fragile bridge that begged for understanding. The waitress, sensing the tension, set a fresh slice of pie in front of George. It seemed trivial in the moment, yet it steadied him. "You don't know what I've been through either, Bill. I'm not perfect. But here I am, reaching out, trying to make it right. Just like a mother does." Tears welled in her eyes as she thought of Mia, her relentless hope echoing against the burdens they carried. Bill sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose, frustration mingling with uncertainty. "It's not that simple." But he hesitated, caught between the years of resentment and the glimmer of possibility that lingered in the warm air. George leaned forward, desperation lacing his words. "It's not simple for either of us. But avoidance only deepens the hurt. I need to know you, Bill. We can't change the past, but I'd give anything to share a future." As the scene unfolded, the once bustling diner felt like a sanctuary wrapped in the warmth of shared humanity. Patrons began to whisper softly, hoping against hope that something beautiful might ignite from this moment. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Bill cleared his throat. "I don't even know where to begin," he said quietly, a hesitant step toward vulnerability. "Start by being honest," Sarah urged, feeling the lifting weight of their shared struggle. "Tell him what you truly feel." A silence fell like a blanket, thick and comforting. Bill opened his mouth but closed it again, wrestling with emotions locked away for far too long. But the spark had been struck. Hope flickered in Sarah's heart as she watched him struggle, wanting so desperately for him to take that final leap of faith into the unknown. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that mirrored the complexities of their lives. What would happen next, as all eyes rested on these three people who were bound by heartache and healing? With breath held and hearts in sync, it was clear that something monumental was about to shift. The next words Bill chose may very well echo into their futures, forging a bond they had deprived themselves of for far too long. Would he choose to face his father? Would George's wish be granted? The air crackled with unspent electricity, and the moment was poised, ready to burst. What would it take to turn this pivotal moment into a new beginning? The silence hung there, thick and heavy. Bill's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of years pressing down on him. He felt the heat of every gaze, but it was not the onlookers he feared, it was the truth. "Fine," he finally said, his voice a mere whisper. "If I'm honest, I don't even know if I want to see you." It hurt to say it, but it felt even worse to keep it buried. George stiffened, the pain evident on his face, yet he held his ground. "That's okay, son. I didn't expect you to welcome me with open arms. I don't deserve that." Sarah reached out, her hand gently touching Bill's elbow. "You're both scared, and that's okay. But you have to talk. Even if it hurts. Talking doesn't change the past." Bill shot back, the frustration spilling over. "You were gone when I needed you most. I lost so much because of you." The diner, now enveloped in their raw emotions, felt both suffocating and liberating. Plates clattered as the other patrons shifted in their seats. Some were with their families, children laughing, but their laughter seemed distant now. All that mattered was this moment. With pain etched into his expression, George spoke, his voice trembling. "I always thought you were better off without me. I thought you'd hate me if you knew how broken I was." "How broken you were?" Bill echoed, eyes narrowing. "You weren't the one who had to lose out on everything." "Maybe it's not about who lost out on what," Sarah interjected passionately, her heart racing with urgency. "It's about finding a way to heal. The hurt won't stop if you keep tearing each other apart. Bill's eyes flickered, and for an instant, clarity pierced the fog. He looked into George's tear-filled eyes, and deep down, something started to shift. It wasn't about excusing the past, it was about building a path forward. I don't want to hate you, he finally admitted, his voice eerily calm. But it's hard to forgive when you feel so alone. George's breath hitched, and he nodded slowly, understanding dawning on him. I never wanted you to feel alone. I wanted to protect you from my demons. Around them, the diner settled into a hush, as if everyone was holding their breath, anticipating what came next. Bill's face softened. I've felt so abandoned, so angry that it hurt to think of you. But maybe, just maybe, I'm ready to talk. To really talk. As he spoke those words, a wave of emotion washed over Sarah, a relief mixed with hope. This was the moment she had dared to dream of, a moment their lives could pivot around. George leaned in closer. Can we start with what we both need? With the truth? Every bit of it? Bill hesitated, his heart racing as he met his father's gaze. All the years of pain, resentment, the ache of silence it pooled in this single moment that demanded honesty. There's so much I want to say, Bill admitted, the tremor returning to his voice. And so much more I need to understand about you. About everything. Sarah watched the transformation unfold, feeling the warmth of their shared humanity wrapping around them like a soft blanket. Perhaps this was the start of something new. Just then, the door swung open, and the chill from outside washed over the diner, mingling with the tension but bringing with it a sudden reminder of reality. A man stepped in, flanked by the dim light of the setting sun. His presence felt heavy with purpose as he approached their table, locking eyes with George. Is this where I find you? The newcomer asked, voice steady and demanding. Bill's heart dropped as he sensed another layer to this unfolding story, one that might just change everything again. Who was this man, and what secrets did he bring? In that instant, the fragile hope of reconciliation hung in the balance, the air thick with uncertainty. Would the past remain buried, or would it push forth into the light, demanding to be reckoned with? The man's gaze shifted between Bill and George, his expression unreadable. You don't know who I am, do you? His voice was like gravel, heavy and deep, yet unyielding. Bill glanced at George, confusion knitting his brow. Should we? George's jaw tightened, surprise flickering across his features, morphing quickly into something more. Fear. Recognition. It was difficult to tell. I'm Thomas, the man said, each syllable weighted with intention. And I've come for a reason. Thomas paused, giving that moment the gravity it demanded. The diner's ambience faded into mere background noise, the clattering of forks and murmured conversations dimming to whispers. George, he continued, his voice lowering, you're going to want to listen closely. The tension in the air thickened as George's defenses started to crumble. What are you talking about? What do you want from me? Thomas stepped closer, revealing a worn photograph from his pocket. He slid it across the table. Bill leaned forward, recognizing the faces caught in time. It was his mother, beaming ear to ear, standing beside a much younger George. My mother, she knew your father, Thomas said, his voice laced with urgency. And she told me everything before she passed. You're not just my half-brother, there's so much more to this. Bill felt a chill race down his spine. Half-brother? The words echoed in his mind, reverberating against the backdrop of his fragmented family history. He looked at George, whose face was ghostly pale as he processed each word. More to what? Bill breathed, his heartbeat thrumming in his ears. Your father was living a double life, Thomas said, glancing around as if the very walls held secrets of their own. He had a family before he met your mother. And he left us when you were just a baby. You thought you were missing your father, but there's so much more you've lost. What do you mean? Bill's voice came out sharper than intended, fueled by confusion and hurt. He felt the world closing in around him, and for the first time, the nagging whispers of his childhood loneliness seemed to surface in waves. Everything you lost, the family you never knew about, it's time to uncover the truth. Thomas's eyes flickered with a mix of determination and hesitation. I need your help to find him. A cold shiver passed through Bill. His heart, which was tentatively reaching for something new with George, felt suddenly threatened. The reconciliation they were inching toward felt like it was crumbling before his eyes. But I don't even know if I can trust you, Bill replied, the uncertainty laying heavy between them. I wouldn't have come if it weren't important, Thomas insisted, his fierce gaze locking onto Bill's. This isn't just about you and George. This touches all of us. As the words lingered in the air, Bill felt Sarah's hand find his, squeezing tightly, grounding him as the whirlwind of secrets spun around them. George's voice broke through, soft but firm. We have to hear him out, Bill. Whatever the truth is, we can face it together. But the question hung like a dark cloud: could they really face it? Bill's mind raced, each thought colliding with another. Fine, he said, barely above a whisper. But it better be worth it. As silence enveloped their table once again, the stakes had just risen higher. The simple act of reconciliation had ignited a far more complicated journey, and Bill couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the cusp of a revelation that could shatter everything they thought they knew. And as Thomas smiled slightly, the tension shifted again, leaving a lingering question: what other secrets lay buried in the past, waiting to be unearthed? The air in the diner felt thick, almost electric, as Bill stared at the photograph. The faces were familiar, yet distant, like fragments of a story he had yet to fully understand. He glanced at George, whose eyes reflected a whirlwind of emotions: shock, pain, and something that seemed like hope. What do you mean, a double life? George finally asked, breaking the silence that had settled around them like a heavy fog. The urgency in his voice cut through the tension, pushing them all forward. Your father didn't just walk away from us. He left for a reason, Thomas stated, his tone firm but tinged with sorrow. I know he must be had his reasons, but we deserve to know the truth. We need to find him, George. Bill could hardly breathe. The reality of their father's legacy was like a bitter pill lodged in his throat. Why should we care? He blurted out. The words hung in the air, sharp and accusatory, revealing the inner turmoil raging inside him. He abandoned us. Why dig up the past? Because it's not just about him, Thomas replied, his voice tempered with passion. It's about us. The pieces you've been missing, the emptiness you felt, it all could make sense if we just know who he really is. You might even find family you never realized existed. George leaned back, his expression betraying the conflict within him. Family is more than blood, Thomas. What if he doesn't want to be found? What if all this, he gestured to the photograph, changes nothing? Bill felt his heart race. I can't go on a wild goose chase over a man who left us. But Thomas wasn't deterred. You don't have to believe me now, he said, his voice steady and unwavering. But wouldn't you want to know why? Maybe it could give you closure. I've spent years piecing together the gaps, and I'm willing to share everything I know. As Thomas spoke, Bill felt the stirrings of curiosity creep in, battling against his anger and betrayal. What if this was an opportunity? What if he could finally find answers to the questions that had haunted him all his life? What do you know? George asked, his voice softer now, the wall he had put up beginning to shake. The yearning for connection flickered in his eyes. I know where he might be, Thomas said resolutely. And I know he has changed. He is not the man you remember or even the man your mother knew. But I need your help to confront him. We need to go together. The thought sent a shudder through Bill. Was he truly ready to dig into this family history? Did he really want to confront the man who had cast such a long shadow over his life? Looking at George, Bill could see the desperation in his brother's eyes. Beneath all the confusion, a flicker of hope ignited. What if he regrets leaving us? George whispered, a plea more than a question. Then we need to ask him, Thomas urged, his gaze steady. It's time. Time for answers, time for closure. Bill took a deep breath, weighing the turmoil inside him. Could they really chase down their lost father and uncover layers of a family he had never known? Would it change everything or just drag them through more pain? With trepidation filling his chest, he looked at Sarah, whose supportive smile reassured him. Okay, he whispered, driven by something deeper than just curiosity, the hope of finally breaking free from the binds of their father's abandonment. But as Thomas outlined the next steps, a tightening dread settled in the pit of Bill's stomach. What if some truths would shatter the fragile connections they were trying to build? What if the past held more darkness than light, lurking just out of reach? As they prepared to turn over this new stone, one thought resonated deeply: were they ready to confront a past that could rewrite their understanding of family forever? The question loomed ominously as they all looked at Thomas, wondering what secrets lay ahead. The diner buzzed softly with the clinks of forks and the murmur of distant conversations, yet for Bill, the world had narrowed down to just the four of them. It felt surreal, as though they were actors in a play, waiting for the curtain to rise on an uncertain future. Each heartbeat echoed in his ears, drowning out the ambient noise around them. So, what's the plan, Thomas? George asked, swallowing hard. The vulnerability in his voice peeled back layers of his usual stoicism. It was a simple question, but it carried the weight of their family's history. Thomas leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. We drive out to the last place I traced him to. It's a small town a few hours away. I've got an address, but I haven't been there myself. You want us to just show up? Bill challenged, skepticism heavy in his tone. Confrontation was one thing, but this felt reckless. George shifted in his seat, tension radiating off him. What if he doesn't want to see us, or worse, what if he doesn't even remember us? We could end up looking like fools. Bill's mind raced, grappling with the implications. I don't want to put ourselves out there just to be rejected again. We've done enough of that with his ghost haunting our lives. I get it, Thomas replied, voice calm but insistent. But what if he wants to see you? What if he has been waiting for you to find him? The room fell silent. Bill glanced at Sarah, her eyes reflecting both empathy and concern. She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, she reminded him softly. But sometimes, it's worth the risk. You deserve answers. The warmth of her touch reminded him of the glue that held his fractured family together. Yet the thought of confronting a memory that had eluded him for so long filled him with dread. What if he is just as broken as the rest of us? George said, his voice thick with emotion. What if he is a stranger now? Then we'll face that together, Thomas said with unwavering resolve. You're not alone in this. None of you are. The stirrings of uncertainty shifted gradually into a stronger feeling that cut through the murky fog of their past. Bill felt a sliver of hope fracture the wall he had built over the years. Maybe this was a chance. I'm in, George said suddenly, his voice steady. Whatever it takes, I want to know. I need to know. Bill hesitated. The reality of it pressed against him like an overwhelming tide, the enormity of the moment washing over him. What about you, Bill? Thomas asked, turning his gaze to him, eyes probing. The question hung there, a rope ready to pull him into the deep waters. With every ounce of courage he could muster, Bill nodded. Okay. I'll go. Relief washed over George, and for the first time, a smile broke through his tension. All right. Let us do this. But as they made plans to leave, doubt flooded back. Even as Bill felt the pull of family, he couldn't shake the question that haunted him. What if the man they found bore no resemblance to the father they needed? What if they found not answers, but more questions, painful and unresolved? Still, in that moment, surrounded by George and Sarah, he felt a flicker of something more: possibility. The chance of understanding, of moving forward, of discovering who they could be as a family. With the plan taking shape, they stood up from the table, the weight of the decision settling heavily on their shoulders. Would this journey bind them closer together, or would it rip open wounds they had just begun to heal? As they stepped outside, Bill took a deep breath, his heart racing for reasons he couldn't fully name. The car ride lay ahead, filled with anticipation and tension, a race toward the unknown. Would they find the answers they sought? Or was it a path that led deeper into the dark? Only time would tell. But as they drove away from the diner, one thing was certain: the journey had only just begun. The engine roared to life, the sound scattering a few birds from the nearby trees. Thomas checked the map on his phone, but the signal flickered in and out, leaving them dependent on old paper maps that felt almost foreign in the digital age. Bill's palms felt clammy against the worn fabric of the seat. As they set off, the familiar streets of their hometown faded into a blur of traffic lights and storefronts. He stole glances at George, who was staring out the window, lost in thought. Sarah sat beside him, her fingers drumming lightly against her knees in a rhythm that matched the growing anxiety in Bill's chest. "Is it a big town?" George broke the silence, turning toward Thomas. "Not really. Just a couple of main roads and some side streets. I found a motel with a diner, a place he used to go." Bill felt the tightness in his throat. This was it. This was the moment they had been waiting for, yet here he was, heart racing, fear creeping in. He hoped the father they were seeking was still the man they remembered, even if those memories were shrouded in pain. Do you think he'll even remember us?" Sarah asked, her voice soft but steady. Bill's chest tightened even more. "What if he doesn't?" "That's a possibility," Thomas replied, steering the conversation gently. "But we can't know until we try." They drove in silence for a while, the only sound the steady hum of the tires against the pavement. Bill kept thinking about their father, his laugh, the faint smell of old aftershave, the distant memory of bedtime stories that now felt like remnants of a fairy tale. What if those were just shadows he had built up over time? The farther they drove, the more unfamiliar the surroundings became. Town after town blurred together until finally, Thomas called out, "We're close. Just a few more miles." A wave of apprehension washed over Bill. He felt it, deep in his bones. It wasn't just about finding their father, it was about confronting everything they had lost. The pain and abandonment. Each moment they had been left with the aftermath of his choices. Would they find a man still processing his own regrets, or would he simply be a stranger? As they pulled into the little town, the quaint charm of the storefronts offered a stark contrast to Bill's anxious thoughts. Little old ladies waved from their porches, children laughed in the park. But there wasn't much joy in Bill's heart. Just uncertainty. "Where's the motel?" George asked with a curious tone. "Right up ahead. We'll check in and head to the diner. I think that's our best shot." Thomas pointed as they turned a corner, and Bill caught sight of the gas station sitting adjacent to a faded sign that read diner. It felt as if time had stilled there, a place untouched by the rush of modernity. Bill's heart raced as they parked the car. When they stepped out, the air was thick with the scent of fried food and the distant sound of laughter. Bill took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. They walked towards the diner in a formed line, shoulders brushing against each other. Each step felt monumental. He could hear the sound of his heartbeat pounding in his ears, drowning out the noise around him. But just as they reached the door, something flickered across Bill's mind, a sense of impending revelation, a feeling that whatever happened next would shape not just this day, but the rest of their lives. "Ready?" Thomas asked, glancing back at him. Bill nodded, though his heart felt full of doubt. As they stepped inside, an array of eyes turned to them, some curious, some indifferent. But Bill's gaze was fixated on the far back corner. And there he was, a man who looked both familiar and foreign, just as Bill had feared. The man they had searched for was sitting with his back turned, oblivious to the storm brewing behind him. What if this meeting shattered everything they hoped for, or worse, what if it miraculously pieced them back together? With measured breaths, they moved toward the table, each step heavier than the last. "Do we call out?" George whispered, anxiety causing his voice to tremble. "But As Bill took a step closer, a deep breath escaped him, revealing a truth he wasn't ready to face. Would he reveal himself now, or let the moment unfold in its own chaotic way? As he reached the edge of the booth, the man turned slowly to face them, his eyes meeting Bill's. The recognition was instant, layered with disbelief and an ocean of unspoken words. Bill opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. And that uncertainty hung thick in the air, waiting for an answer that could change everything. The diner seemed to hold its breath. Time slowed as Bill stared into the eyes of the man he had spent years longing to know, to understand. The skin on the man's face was weathered and worn, each line a testament to a life lived far from them. It was as if he could physically feel the years stretching between them, a chasm of silence and sorrow. "Bill," the man finally said, his voice shaky, a mix of hope and disbelief trailing each syllable. Bill's heart skipped. It was his name, echoed across time like a distant memory. The sound of it sent a wave of nostalgia crashing over him, memories mingling with all the pain that had lingered since their father left. Before he could respond, Sarah stepped forward, her eyes wide with tears. "Dad," she said, her voice barely a whisper, as if saying the word would shatter the fragile moment they had all yearned for. The man's face transformed in an instant. Shock morphed into something deeper, a flicker of recognition, then sorrow, as he grappled with emotions that had been locked away. He fumbled with the edge of the table, his fingers trembling. I never thought I'd see you again," he stammered. There was a painful honesty in his eyes, accompanied by a grief so profound that it felt almost suffocating. What should he say? Bill stumbled over words that clashed within him. The boy he once was lost amid the heaviness of the man before him. "We wanted to find you," he finally managed to say, each word breaking the ice of years spent in silence. "Did you?" The man looked away, as if afraid to meet their eyes. "Did you really want to find me, or just finish what was left behind?" Bill felt a sharp pang in his chest. Those words cut deeper than he expected. We wanted to understand. We wanted you back." The desperation rang in his voice, trying to pull from inside the man some piece of the father they had lost, but instead of warmth, the man shields himself with a look that screamed vulnerability. "I've lost too much. I'm not the man you think I am." The truth hit like a punch. Bill felt as though he was standing on a cliff, teetering on the edge of hope and despair. There was a murmur among the diner's patrons, their forks clattering to plates as they caught snippets of the unfolding drama. They were a silent audience to the rawness of a family on the verge of either healing or complete destruction. "What happened? Why did you leave?" Sarah's voice broke as she stepped forward, her bravery mingling with anguish. She needed answers, and so did they all. For a moment, the man just looked down at the table, his shoulders trembling as if the weight of years bore down on him. "There are things I need to explain. Things that I wish I could go back and change, but it's not that simple." Thomas glanced at Bill and Sarah, worry painting his face. He knew well the stakes in that conversation, the risks of reopening wounds that might never heal. "Maybe we should sit down and talk," he suggested gently, sensing the need for calm in the chaos. Bill nodded, looking back at his father, whose eyes were scanning the faces of his children, searching for a way to connect through words that had been unsaid for too long. "We want to understand," Bill repeated softly. "But you have to meet us halfway." With a deep breath, the man finally lifted his gaze and locked eyes with Bill. There was a flicker of something, maybe hope, or perhaps an acknowledgement of the storm that awaited them. "All right. Let us talk. But be warned. I have my truths, and they might hurt." As they settled into the booth, the air thick with unspoken fears and tentative hope, a strange sense of unity began to weave its way through them. They were all scared, but there was a chance for healing, for reuniting a family that was shattered but not yet gone. But as the conversation began, Bill couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at the precipice of a larger revelation. What would his father share? And would any of it be enough to rebuild the trust they all craved? The door to the diner swung open, chiming gently, though the world inside was far from peaceful. A shadow fell over them, a figure from the past stepping through the doorway. Bill's heart stuttered. He couldn't shake the feeling that this new arrival wasn't just a visitor, they were part of his father's hidden story. What other secrets lay buried beneath the surface? The air was thick with tension as the reality of uncovering truths loomed just beyond reach. Bill's breath caught in his throat as he glanced at the figure filling the doorway. The man was tall and broad-shouldered, with a familiar stance that made Bill's heart race. He was older than he had last seen but still possessed an unmistakable aura of confidence. Who was this man? Chris. The father whispered, disbelief rippling through him. The newcomer's eyes widened. Jim. He faltered, taking a hesitant step forward. At that moment, the atmosphere shifted in the diner. The murmurs grew louder, conversations halting as patrons turned, witnessing the unfolding drama that felt more like a scene from a film than a dusty diner in the heart of town. Do you know him? Bill asked, his voice trembling slightly. His father's features hardened, the warmth quickly retreating, replaced by a sudden wariness. You shouldn't be here, Chris, not now. Why not? Chris responded, anger flaring in his eyes. After all these years? You think you can just disappear and act like everything is okay? Bill and Sarah exchanged confused glances. Their father's past swirled before them, a story woven with threads they knew little of. Their father had mentioned no one named Chris. Who was he, and why did he seem so furious? Leave, Jim insisted, clutching the table, as though it kept him grounded in the moment. Nobody leaves this time, Chris shot back, his voice rising, threatening to shatter the fragile atmosphere. You owe me answers as much as you owe them. With that, he gestured to Bill and Sarah, who sat aghast, caught in the tempest that brewed around them. What is happening? Sarah's voice finally broke through the chaos, a tremor of confusion blending with fear. Who are you? It's complicated, their father replied, his gaze flickering from his children to the man who had just entered their world. Complicated is an understatement. Chris glanced at the two siblings, the anger seeming to melt under the weight of their innocence. You deserve to know the truth. All of it. Bill's stomach twisted. The weight of secrets hung heavy in the air, and his heart felt like it might explode from the pressure of unspoken words. He could sense something monumental was about to happen, and the worst part was that he had no idea what it could be. Determined, he spoke again. If there is something we need to know, we want to learn it now. Enough is enough. The plea in his voice resonated loudly as if it pulled strength from years of desire to reconnect with a father he barely knew. Fine, Chris said defiantly, crossing his arms. You think you're ready for this? Family isn't just about blood. It's about loyalty, choices, and sacrifices. He paused, staring deep into Jim's eyes. Some choices lead to loss that has impacted all of us. The tension hung like a thunderstorm on the verge of breaking. Every patron in the diner, every fork and plate, faded into the background, leaving only the four of them poised on a precipice of revelation. This isn't just about you anymore, Dad, Bill pressed, his heart pounding. This is about all of us. You need to tell us what you failed to protect us from. The momentary silence captivated them, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last, like a ticking clock leading to midnight. Jim's expression softened for an instant, but fear still flickered in his eyes. Suddenly, a shattering glass interrupted their charged conversation. Everyone turned and gasped as a waitress stumbled, staring wide-eyed at the remnants of the spilled drink. Let us step outside, Chris suggested, taking a deep breath. It's time we all take a breath and face this. As they followed him to the door, an unearthly feeling took over Bill. Questions raced through his mind. What would they learn today? What hidden truths lay beyond this moment? But before they could step into the uncertainty looming ahead, they heard a loud crash from the back of the diner, forcing the air to freeze once more. What was happening? What more could they face on this day of reckonings? The shadows of the past beckoned, and the truth was impatient. Would the revelations that followed so? Together the fragments of their family, or would they find themselves unraveling even further? The tension in the air was palpable as they stepped outside. The sun hung low in the golden sky, casting long shadows across the diner parking lot. Chris turned to face Jim, whose features were pinched with a mixture of regret and apprehension. Bill felt Sarah's hand tighten around his. He needed her strength now more than ever. The crowd of patrons had faded into mere strangers, but they were still a part of this moment, watching, waiting. "All right, we're listening," Chris said, his tone steady yet unwavering, pushing Jim to confront the truth that had long been buried. Jim ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit. "You kids have to understand it wasn't just about me leaving. There were things I couldn't tell your mother. Choices that I made." His voice trailed off, thick with all the emotions he had kept carefully tucked away. "Try us," Bill urged, desperation rising within him. "We can't keep living in this shadow. You owe us more than silence." "Yeah," Sarah chimed in, her voice strong and determined. "You owed us this long before we walked in that diner." Jim's eyes flickered from Bill to Sarah, and he seemed to deflate slightly. "It's complicated. It's not just about family secrets," he said cautiously. "Chris grew up knowing things that I didn't want you to find out." "What things?" Bill pressed, his frustration boiling over. Chris stepped forward, his features hardening. "Your father didn't abandon you for no reason. There was a love before your mother, a family that he felt he had to leave behind when I was born. A life lived in shadows, with choices he was forced to make." As Jim absorbed the weight of those words, he looked as if time had shifted around him, reality pressing in. "I loved your mother, and I thought I was doing the right thing by leaving that life behind. I didn't want to drag you both into a mess you didn't deserve." "What do you mean a life lived in shadows?" Bill's heartbeat thundered in his ears, each question layered with layers of truths he had yet to face. Chris sighed heavily, his walls cracking. "Your father had a father, too. One I can't say was worth knowing. There were things he hid from you, things that could have shattered your childhood." "Then tell us," Sarah exclaimed, her brow knit with urgency. "We want to know what we've been missing out on. Our whole lives have been a series of questions." A moment of silence fell amongst them, with Jim looking almost fragile, as if the weight of his past was too much to bear. "My father wasn't a good man," he admitted, each word laden with regret. "He made deals, dangerous ones. He told me lies. I ran away hoping never to look back." Bill felt a pang in his chest. "So you left Chris behind?" The pain layered through the question like a tangible wound. "I didn't know he existed until it was too late," Jim said, regret lacing his voice. "And when I found out, it scared me. I broke the family cycle, but in doing so, I created new cycles of hurt and secrecy." Chris took a step closer, frustration reddening his cheeks. "But you had a chance to reach out, to be open about it. Instead, you vanished and denied me my place in the world." The accusation hung heavily in the air, charged and raw. Bill felt overwhelmed, a mix of resentment and understanding swirling within him. "We all want answers," he declared, looking from Chris back to Jim. "But if we want to heal, we need to face this together." A flicker of hope ignited in Sarah's eyes. Bill could sense it was time. "What do you say, Dad? Are you ready to face this, to finally be a family for real this time?" As Jim looked from Bill to Sarah to Chris, the weight of realization settled upon his shoulders. "I can't promise everything will be okay," he murmured. "But I want to work on it. I want to try." In that moment, something shifted under the weight of acknowledgement. A doorway opened, a sense of clarity breaking through the fog of years past. "Then let us start now," Chris insisted, emotion churning in his voice. "We owe it to ourselves and to each other." With the sun setting in the background, painting the world in warm tones, they stood there at the crossroads of their fractured past and the possibility of a better tomorrow. It was a moment, the first step towards a healing journey that could bind them together in the unpredictable mess of life ahead. "I'll work to be the father you deserve," Jim said, and for the first time, a hint of sincerity shone through his gaze, the weight of his choices tinged with hope. With their hearts full and the past looming large but not insurmountable, Bill, Sarah, and Chris nodded in unison. This was a beginning. Together they would face the tides of their family history and learn to rewrite the narrative moving forward, side by side. As they turned back to the diner, a sense of unity began to wrap around them, warm and inviting. They were still uncertain, but they no longer stood alone. The path ahead was unknown, yet filled with promise, and who knew? Maybe by sharing the burden of the past, they'd find the strength to build a future that was finally theirs. Now, if this story has moved you in any way, you need to subscribe now and hit that bell. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure you never miss a story like this again. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about this ending. We're eager to hear your reactions. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Your support makes a true difference.